Yeah, we back. Now, today, man, we're going to be talking about the president of Portugal says that it's time for the Portuguese government to pay reparations to the descendants of the 6 million plus Africans they human trafficked into the Western Hemisphere. Let's talk about it. Take a look up on the screen. Portugal must pay the cost of slavery and colonial crimes, says the president of Portugal. Now, I've already made my position known on the topic of reparations. Ain't none of y'all getting reparations if you ain't ready to die about it. I don't care where you from. I don't care what slave ship they dropped you off on. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care what culture you represent. If you ain't ready to die about it, don't even talk about it, because they're ready to die about it. Now, let's jump into the article. President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa said late on Tuesday that Portugal was responsible for crimes committed during the transatlantic slave trade and the colonial era, and suggested that there was a need for reparations. For over 4 centuries, at least 12.5 million of our foremothers and forefathers were kidnapped and forcibly transported long distances by European ships and merchants and sold into slavery. Those who survived the voyage ended up toiling on plantations in the Americas, mostly in Brazil and the Caribbean, while others profited from their labor. Portugal trafficked nearly 6 million Africans, more than any other European nation, but has failed so far to confront its past, and little is taught about its role in the transatlantic slavery in schools. Well, listen, none of the true history is taught in any schools, anywhere. So, it's a reason why 12.5 million of our foremothers and forefathers have not yet been avenged, because the young babies, the young children, are not being taught their history. They're not being taught that they have 12.5 million ancestors they must avenge. But anyway, let's continue. Speaking at an event with foreign correspondents late on Tuesday, President Rebelo said Portugal takes full responsibility for the wrongs of the past, and that those crimes, including colonial massacres, had costs. We have to pay the cost, he said. Are there actions that were not punished and those responsible were not arrested? Are there goods that were looted and not returned? Let's see how we can repair this. Now, take a look up on the screen. A few days after the president made that statement, Portugal's government rejects paying reparations for their colonial and slavery legacy. Now, let's jump straight into the article. Portugal's government said on Saturday that it refuses to initiate any process to pay reparations for atrocities committed during the transatlantic slave trade and the colonial era, contrary to earlier comments from President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. Now, I don't know, is it an election year in Portugal? Is the president running for re-election? He's trying to get the black vote or something? I don't really know, but for whatever reason, he decided to make that statement, and a few days later, the lawmakers in government said, hell no, we're not paying a fucking dime. We're not paying a fucking dime over my dead body. If they want this money, they better come get it in blood. I'm gonna let you know in case you didn't know. That's what they feel inside. They feel if you want to get that money, you better come get it in blood, because they're not gonna pay it willingly. And also, Portugal don't got no fucking money anyway. Portugal is fucking broke, okay? It's like this. The main countries that got rich, the main kingpins that built the wealth of their nations off the back of the transatlantic slave trade was the United Kingdom, France, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, and the United States, right? Those are the main kingpins, right? Like when the transatlantic slave trade was popping, they was on the block getting money, right? So now the United States is currently the most powerful, the most wealthy off the back of the transatlantic slave trade, right? So it's like a kingpin that made their money and went into legal business, and now they got millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? You got France, who still is like a old kingpin, still got a lot of old money from back in the day when they was in the streets, right? Then you got Spain. Spain kind of fell off. It's like that drug dealer that went to jail, fell off, don't got no fucking money no more. Like he got a little bit of money, but he's not like back in the day when he was really the big heavyweight on the block, right? And then you got Portugal. Portugal is like the old drug dealer that don't got shit no more. He don't got no fucking money. He's on the block with the youngins, looking dusty. You know what I mean? Talking about his glory days from back in the day. Talking about, back in the 80s. I had a Mercedes-Benz back in the 80s, but now he's fucking broke. He don't got shit. He at the bus stop now. That's Portugal, right? Portugal don't got nothing to show for it. Portugal did all that slave trading, all that colonization, did all that enslavement, and they don't got nothing to show for it in the present day. They don't got nothing to show for it. They don't got a military. They don't got nothing respectable. Their economy's trash. They're a fucking tourist destination, essentially. They did all that shit for no reason. Kidnapped and murdered our people for no reason. Assassinated our people for no reason. Enslaved our people for no reason. Even if they wanted to pay, they don't got no damn money to pay. Portugal is a joke. Let's continue. The government said in a statement sent to the Portuguese news agency that it wants to deepen mutual relations and respect for historical truth and increasingly intense and close cooperation based on reconciliation of brotherly people. I'm shaking my head right now. Y'all can't see it, but I'm just shaking my head right now. I'm just shaking my head. Man. Wow. Now, this is not my fight. I'm not from Brazil. I'm not from, Mozambique. I'm not from, I'm not from any of these Portuguese colonies. So this is not my fight. But I've always had the mentality of, if you touch one of us, you touch all of us. So even though it's not my fight, I still look at the Portuguese as an adversary, just like any other colonial nation. I look at them equally as an adversary as any other colonial nation. And in fact, the Portuguese economy is so trash that the flow of migration actually is flowing from Portugal to its former colonies. You actually have citizens of Portugal that leave Portugal to go to their former colonies. That's how trash the Portuguese economy is. That's how much they fell off, right? From a world power, a world-class military, a world-class navy, to now you ain't got shit, bro. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got shit, bro. But anyways, let's continue. The government added that it had no process or program of specific actions for paying reparations, noting that this line was followed by previous governments. It called relations with their former colonies truly excellent and cited cooperation in areas such as education, language, culture, healthcare, in addition to financial, budgetary, and economic cooperation. Now, I'll say this. Similar to the Spaniards, the Portuguese did an excellent job of, colonization, right? They were not as brutal as the French. They were not as hard line as the Americans. I would say that the Portuguese and the Spaniards did a really good job in terms of assimilating their subjects into their culture. Race mixing especially was very crucial to that. Bringing the women into the fold, allowing the women to teach the children the Portuguese culture, assimilate them to the Portuguese culture, the Catholic culture, to the point where I don't think many of the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade in the former Portuguese colonies, I don't think they really care about reparations. I think they've assimilated. I think they've adjusted to the culture. I think they've accepted what it was. I don't think they really have any beef with Portugal. I don't think they, I think they've embraced it, right? I think that the Portuguese and the Spaniards did a really good job at colonization. When you look at the former Portuguese colonies, the former Spanish colonies, and how well they did in assimilating their subjects and bringing them into the family, so to speak, especially through the women, I think they did a really good job to where, like they said, that might actually be true. Their relationship might actually be truly excellent, right? So they might not have no beef or no hard feelings. You know what I mean? Whereas the French and the Americans, for example, were so hard line and so brutal, and they kept so many boundaries in place to separate themselves from their subjects, to where they never assimilated them into the culture. They make sure they keep them at a distance, right? One drop rule. The French made up so many different racial classifications. The Americans came up with the one drop rule. They were very hard line in making sure that they kept a distance between themselves and their colonized subjects. Whereas the Spaniards and the Portuguese were way more liberal and way more open and brought them into the fold, to where now I don't think that there's ever going to be a widespread movement in the former Portuguese colonies or even the Spanish colonies for reparations, because like I said, they did an excellent job at colonization. And it was due to the fact that the forefathers of the Portuguese and the Spaniards did such an excellent job at colonization that I don't think they're ever going to have to pay a dime. I don't think it's ever going to come to that, because when you look at how they, when you look at their policies of how they used intermarriage, how they utilized the missionaries to indoctrinate the people, they've watered it down so much to the point to where even if they did pay reparations, who would they pay reparations to? Because take Brazil, for example. You have a lot of white passing Brazilians that are the descendants of African slaves, right? But they've been amalgamated and mixed so much to the point where we don't even know who would even get the money no more. So to be honest, listen, the Portuguese did a great job at colonization. Like I said, they fell off. They don't got shit no more. They don't got shit no more. They fell off, but they did a great job at colonization. They did a great job. In fact, take a look up on the screen. It's actually from the Portuguese colonies that we get this painting, this famous painting from over a century ago. You see the African grandmother on the left, right? You got the mixed race daughter in the middle with her, her Portuguese husband to the right. And then you have their European descendant infant baby girl or baby son in the middle, right? So the Portuguese, listen, they did a great job at colonization, man. They really did a good job. Now, let's take a look at this reaction on social media, right? This person right here said, what if the global South got together and did what the United States and Europe have done to the global South? Put sanctions on the West, freeze assets and access to resources, restrict trade and travel until they pay back their debt from slavery and colonization. Now, me personally, I don't like to use the term the global South because I just like to say black nations. Okay, black nations, I just keep it like that. I don't say the global South because when you talk about the so-called global South, then you have to talk about all type of different nations that ain't even black. You got to talk about, the Asians, in Indonesia and Pakistan and the Philippines and Bangladesh. You got to talk about, Cambodia and Vietnam, and you got to talk about, Yemen, Afghanistan and Palestine and all this shit. Listen, I don't give a fuck about that. You know what I'm saying? I don't care about that. I don't use the term the global South. I just say black nations. I think that's, black nations. That's all we need. If the black nations come together and we put sanctions on the West and we freeze assets and access to resources, yes. But that would take unity. That would take cooperation. That would take enlightened leadership. Right. So, yes, that is the goal. That is the way to get reparations. You have to unite your forces, all your forces, economically, politically, and militarily, especially militarily. Because, we might have to mobilize the troops. You know what I'm saying? It might come to a place where you might have to mobilize the troops. I'm dead ass serious. But anyways, man, it's your boy Neferkari. That's Salim back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash App up on the screen. And I'm gone. Peace.